poor single dad let a strange girl stay for one night, unaware she was a millionaire's daughter. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. It was a cold, stormy night in the small town of Brooksville. The wind howled through the trees, and heavy rain poured down, turning the streets into rivers of water. John, a single father, had just finished his long day at work, exhausted but determined to make ends meet for his young son. With his wife having passed away 2 years ago, John had learned to juggle his job and parenting alone. He made his way home, hoping to find warmth and peace. As he stepped out of his car and hurried toward his front door, he noticed a young woman standing near the bus stop, drenched and shivering in the cold. She wore a thin jacket, and her hair stuck to her face. John hesitated for a moment. He had little to give, but the sight of her struggling in the rain stirred something in him. Without a second thought, he walked over and offered her his jacket. The young woman looked at him, startled at first, but then smiled gratefully. "Thank you, but you really don't have to," she said, her voice shaky from the cold. John smiled back, "I can't let you freeze out here." She hesitated for a moment before accepting the jacket. The two exchanged a few polite words, and after some time, John noticed that the bus she was waiting for was delayed, and the storm was getting worse. He had no idea what was going on in her life, but his gut told him she needed help. "You can stay with us for the night," he offered. "I have a spare room, and it's better than standing out here in this weather." The young woman, whose name was Lily, nodded gratefully. John, seeing how exhausted she looked, led her into his modest home. The inside was warm, filled with the scent of a home-cooked meal. John's son, Ethan, was already asleep, and he quickly offered Lily some hot tea before showing her to the guest room. As she settled in, Lily looked around the small but cozy house. It wasn't much, but it had everything a home needed: warmth, comfort, and most importantly, kindness. That night, as Lily lay in bed, she couldn't help but think how strange life was. Just hours ago, she was stranded in the middle of a storm, a stranger in a strange town. Now, she was safe in a bed, with someone who didn't know a thing about her. She had made the decision to leave her wealthy family, but she wasn't sure what was next. She had always lived in luxury, but at that moment, it felt like everything she had known before didn't matter. She wondered if John had any idea who she really was. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the tension in the air remained. John made breakfast for both of them, and they sat together in the small kitchen. They didn't say much at first, but as they ate, John found himself wanting to know more about Lily. She seemed so different from the people he usually interacted with, yet there was something about her that was familiar. Lily, on the other hand, couldn't help but admire John's strength and selflessness. Despite everything he had been through, he still found the capacity to help a stranger in need. As the day went on, they began to talk more, and Lily slowly started to open up about her life. But there was still so much she hadn't revealed. What Lily didn't know was that this seemingly random act of kindness would change both of their lives forever. After a warm breakfast, the rain had stopped, and the day seemed to have brightened, though the storm still lingered in the cool air. John and Lily sat at the small kitchen table in his modest home, sipping coffee and sharing an awkward silence. John had a lot of questions, but he wasn't sure where to begin. He had always been a man of few words, but something about Lily's quiet demeanor made him want to know more. He could tell there was something different about her, but he didn't want to pry too soon. The storm outside had left behind puddles that reflected the clear sky, a perfect contrast to the turbulent conversation that loomed. John decided to break the silence. "So, where are you from, Lily?" he asked, his voice steady but kind. Lily looked up at him, her blue eyes carrying a certain sadness. She hesitated, then replied softly, "I come from a place far different than this. My family, they're wealthy, but I don't feel like I belong there anymore." She paused, and John could sense that there was more to her story. "I left," she added, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just needed to get away." John nodded, sensing the weight of her words. He didn't ask any more questions. It wasn't his place to press her for details she wasn't ready to share. He couldn't help but wonder, though, why someone who came from wealth would end up on the streets, asking for help. His curiosity nagged at him, but his instincts told him to be patient. He made a mental note to ask again when the time felt right. They spent the rest of the morning talking about everyday things, how he had managed to keep the house running after his wife passed away, and how Lily had been moving from one place to the next, trying to find peace. By lunchtime, John's son, Ethan, had woken up, and the two of them went out for a quick grocery run while Lily stayed behind. John couldn't shake the feeling that Lily wasn't telling him everything, but he wasn't sure if he should ask. He returned to the house with a few bags of groceries, and when he walked in, he was greeted by the sight of Lily sitting on the couch, looking out the window. She seemed lost in thought, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. Ethan ran up to John, and the two of them laughed as they carried the bags into the kitchen. Lily turned to them, smiling faintly. "Do you need help with anything?" she asked. John smiled back, but there was something about her that still felt distant. "No, we're good," he replied, though he noticed that she didn't seem quite as relaxed as before. The afternoon passed quietly. Ethan played with his toys in the living room while John and Lily sat in the kitchen, talking. Slowly, Lily began to open up more about her life, telling John about the family she had left behind. Her father, a successful businessman, had always kept her under his strict control. She had everything she could ever want: money, clothes, the best education, but none of it ever felt real. She described how her family's wealth had become a cage, and how she had grown tired of the constant pressure to live up to their expectations. Her mother, cold and distant, had never truly understood her, and Lily had begun to question if her place in their world was worth the price. As she spoke, John couldn't help but feel sympathy for her. He had no idea what it was like to live in the world of wealth, but he could see how it had torn her apart. Her desire for freedom was so palpable, and he admired her courage for leaving it all behind. Later that evening, as they sat around the dinner table, John's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. He got up and opened it to find a man standing on the porch, holding a large bouquet of flowers. "Is this the home of Lily Carter?" the man asked. John's heart skipped a beat. The name Carter hit him like a bolt of lightning, and he instantly knew that Lily had been hiding something from him. The man continued, "I'm a private investigator. I'm here looking for Lily. Her family is worried about her." John's mind raced. He hadn't expected this, and he wasn't sure what to do. The man's presence made everything seem so much more complicated. Lily had been so kind, so genuine, but now it was clear that her past was catching up with her. He turned to Lily, who had appeared in the hallway. Her face was pale, and for a moment, she seemed paralyzed with fear. She quickly regained her composure, walking toward the door. "You can tell them I'm fine," she said, her voice shaky but firm. The man nodded but didn't leave. "I was instructed to bring you back to your family, Lily," he said. "They've been worried sick." John felt his stomach twist. This was the last thing he had expected. He glanced at Lily, who stood tall, her eyes filled with a mix of defiance and regret. "I'm not going back," she said firmly. The man hesitated, glancing at John for a moment, before sighing and handing the bouquet to Lily. "If you change your mind, we'll be waiting for you," he said softly. He turned and walked off, disappearing into the night. Lily stood there, holding the flowers in her hands, her expression unreadable. The air between them felt heavy, like a secret that had been exposed but not fully understood. John had no idea what had just happened, but one thing was clear: Lily's past was not something she could easily escape from. The night after the investigator left, Lily stood in the living room, holding the bouquet of flowers in her hands, still processing the interaction that had just taken place. John could sense her unease, but he didn't push her for answers. He respected her need for space. Ethan had already gone to bed, and the house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards. John sat on the couch, watching the fire flicker in the fireplace. Lily walked over and placed the flowers on the table, her hands trembling slightly. She then turned to him, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "I didn't think it would come to this," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could get away, start over somewhere else, but they always find me. They always send someone." John leaned forward, his gaze steady. "You don't have to go back if you don't want to," he said. "You've been through a lot, and it's clear that you're trying to find something real, something that matters." Lily looked at him, her lips trembling. "I just don't know if I can escape it. I've spent my whole life in a world of privilege, but it's never felt like it was mine. I've always been trapped in their expectations, their control." She paused, tears threatening to spill over. "I wanted to be free, John. But now, I'm not so sure. What if they come for me again?" John stood up and walked over to her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face it alone. You've already made it this far, and I'm not going to let you go back to that place if you don't want to. You have a choice now. You're not stuck in their world anymore." His words hung in the air, filled with sincerity. Lily looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt, but all she saw was the warmth and support that he had given her from the very beginning. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, she realized that she wasn't alone anymore. John wasn't just offering her shelter for the night, he was offering her a chance at something she hadn't had in years, peace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking slightly. John gave her a reassuring smile and patted her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. Just take it one day at a time." The next morning, as the sun peeked through the blinds, the house was filled with a sense of quiet anticipation. John made breakfast for the three of them, though it felt like an awkward routine, the tension between them still palpable. Ethan, always the curious one, asked a lot of questions about Lily's past, but Lily avoided giving too many details, offering only vague answers about her travels and what brought her to this town. John, sensing her discomfort, gently redirected Ethan's attention to his favorite toy, letting the conversation shift. Over the course of the day, Lily stayed in the background, helping John with small chores around the house, but there was a noticeable distance between them. She hadn't fully opened up to him yet, and John understood that. She needed time. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, John decided it was time to ask her the questions that had been weighing on his mind. "Lily," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "I don't want to pressure you, but I need to know what's really going on. I'm here to help, but I can't do that if you're not willing to let me in." Lily looked down at her plate, her fork moving absently over the food. She was silent for a long moment before she finally spoke. "I didn't want to get anyone involved in this, especially you," she said, her voice quiet. "I've lived my whole life in a world that doesn't feel real. Everything was planned for me, who I should be, what I should do, who I should marry. I've always been told that I'm not allowed to make my own choices." She paused, taking a deep breath. "But I wanted more than that. I wanted to be my own person, to make my own decisions. So, I left. I left everything behind, hoping that I could find something real." John listened intently, not interrupting her. He could see the pain in her eyes, the years of frustration and rebellion that had led her to this point. "But my family didn't let me go easily," she continued. "They sent people to find me. They've been doing it for months now. It's not just the money, John. It's the control. They want me back, but I can't go back. I can't be who they want me to be anymore." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear. "What if they send someone again? What if they make me go back?" John leaned forward, his expression serious. "You don't have to go back. Not unless you choose to. And even then, you don't have to do it alone. If you want to stay here, you can. But you have to make that choice, Lily." The weight of his words hung in the air, but Lily's face softened. She knew in that moment that she was no longer alone in this fight. She had someone who cared about her, someone who would stand by her side no matter what happened next. For the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. She had been running for so long, but now, for the first time, she felt like she could finally stop. "I don't know what the future holds, John," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I think I'm ready to face it. With you, by my side." John smiled at her, a gentle smile that conveyed understanding and reassurance. "We'll figure it out together," he said. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, Lily knew that she had found something she hadn't thought possible, a place to call home. The following days passed quietly in the small house where John and Lily had settled into an uneasy routine. The calmness of their new life was in stark contrast to the storm that had preceded it. John tried his best to provide stability for both Lily and his son Ethan, though the presence of a stranger in their home still felt new and uncertain. Lily had grown comfortable with the idea of staying, but the event of the previous days weighed heavily on her mind. She spent most of her time in the house, helping John with chores, but there was an air of unease about her. It was as though she was waiting for something, or perhaps someone, to show up and disrupt the fragile peace they had created. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, casting a warm glow through the kitchen window, John noticed Lily staring out at the horizon, her expression distant. "What's on your mind?" he asked gently, setting down a plate of food on the table. Lily turned to him, her eyes a little more clouded than usual. "I just keep thinking about my family," she admitted, her voice quiet. "What if they come looking for me again? What if they send someone else? I don't know how much longer I can keep running." John sat down beside her, offering a reassuring smile. "You don't have to run anymore, Lily. You're here now, and as long as you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. We'll figure it out together." Her eyes met his, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. She had spent so much of her life running from her past, but perhaps now she could face it, on her own terms. As the weeks passed, John and Lily grew closer. They learned more about each other's lives, though Lily still remained reluctant to share too many details about her past. John respected her boundaries, not pushing her for answers she wasn't ready to give. Their days were simple. John would go to work, and Lily would help around the house, spending time with Ethan when he was home from school. Ethan had grown fond of Lily, often asking her to play games or read books with him in the evenings. The bond between them felt natural, like a family that had always been meant to be. Lily couldn't help but notice how much love John had for his son. She admired the way he put Ethan's needs above his own, how he was willing to sacrifice everything to make sure his son was happy. She had never seen that kind of love in her own family, where everything was transactional, where love was something that had to be earned or measured. John's love for Ethan was unconditional, and it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years: peace. One day, as John returned home from work, he found Lily sitting on the porch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked up as he approached, and he could see the worry in her eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting down his bag and sitting beside her. She hesitated before speaking. "I got a letter today," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's from my father. He says they're coming to get me. They want me to come back." John's heart sank. He had known this day would come, but he wasn't sure how to handle it. He looked at Lily, his expression serious. "What do you want to do?" he asked. She looked at him, her eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know if I can keep running. But I don't want to go back to that life either. I can't go back to them, John. Not after everything." John nodded, understanding her pain. He reached out and took her hand, offering a silent promise that he would help her figure it out. "You don't have to make a decision right now," he said softly. "Take your time. We'll face this together, whatever happens." That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her father's letter, the cold, authoritative tone that had once been all too familiar. Her family had never understood her need for independence, for freedom. They had always tried to control her, and now they were trying to pull her back into their world, a world that felt like a prison. But she didn't want to go back. She had found something here, a sense of belonging, of being seen for who she truly was, not just as a pawn in a family's game. The next morning, John and Lily sat down together, their conversation quiet but serious. John could see the weight of the decision in Lily's eyes. She had been through so much, and now she had to choose between the life she had left behind and the life she had started to build with him and Ethan. "I don't know what to do," Lily said, her voice breaking. "I don't want to go back to that life, but I also don't want to lose everything I've built here. I don't want to drag you and Ethan into this mess." John looked at her. His expression calm and steady. "You don't have to make that choice alone, Lily," he said firmly. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. And no matter what your family says, you have a place here with us. You're not alone in this anymore." His words were a comfort to her, a reassurance that she wasn't fighting this battle by herself. She had been so used to fighting for everything on her own, but now she had a support system, a family that cared for her. For the first time, she felt like she could finally stop running. She looked at John, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." John smiled and squeezed her hand. "You don't have to worry about that. We're in this together." The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but also with hope. Lily knew that her family wouldn't give up easily, but she was ready to fight for the life she had chosen. She wasn't just running anymore, she was standing her ground. And with John and Ethan by her side, she felt stronger than ever. The following week brought with it a new level of tension, one that had been steadily building since Lily received the letter from her father. The peaceful rhythm they had settled into at John's house felt fragile, like glass, ready to shatter at any moment. Every time the phone rang or the doorbell chimed, Lily's heart skipped a beat, fearing it would be someone from her family, trying once again to drag her back into a life she had fought so hard to escape. John noticed the change in her, the way she seemed more distant, more withdrawn, though she tried to hide it. She went about her days with the same quiet determination, helping him with the house, playing with Ethan, but there was always a shadow in her eyes. John could see the strain in her shoulders, the way she would clench her fists when the silence stretched too long. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, John decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. He had waited, given her the space she needed, but now he could see that she wasn't going to come to him on her own. "Lily," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "we need to talk about this. I know it's been hard, but you can't keep carrying this burden alone." Lily looked at him, her eyes wide, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "I'm not carrying anything," she said quickly, her tone defensive. "I'm fine." John didn't buy it. He had seen the toll it was taking on her. "You don't have to pretend, Lily. You've been through so much, and you're not alone anymore. I'm here for you. Whatever happens with your family, we'll face it together." Her eyes welled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. She was so used to hiding her emotions, so used to facing everything on her own, but something about John's words broke through the walls she had built around herself. "I don't know what to do," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions. On one hand, I want to stay here, with you and Ethan, but on the other, I don't know how much longer I can keep running from them. They won't stop until they find me." John reached out, placing a hand on hers. "You don't have to make this decision on your own. You're not running anymore. You have a choice now. And if that means standing up to them, I'm here to help you do that." Lily looked at him, her heart aching with gratitude. She had never had someone stand by her like this before, never had anyone tell her that she could make her own choices, that she didn't have to live her life according to someone else's rules. It was both terrifying and liberating. "What if they don't stop?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if they keep coming, keep trying to drag me back into their world?" John's expression was steady, his resolve clear. "Then we'll deal with it. But you don't have to go back to that world, Lily. Not if you don't want to." You have a family here now, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect you. His words were a lifeline, a promise she had never thought she would hear. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future free from her past. The next day, John took a day off from work, deciding that it was time to act. They needed to face this head-on, whatever it was. "We're going to handle this," he said as he sat across from Lily at the kitchen table. "But we need to know exactly what we're up against. If your family is really going to keep sending people after you, we need to be prepared." Lily nodded, her hands shaking slightly. She hadn't wanted to involve John in the mess that was her life, but she realized that he was right. She couldn't keep hiding. They made a plan. Lily would write a letter to her father, telling him that she had no intention of returning and that she was no longer under his control. She would make it clear that she was an adult now, capable of making her own decisions. The letter was hard to write, each word feeling like a weight lifting off her chest. She had spent so many years being forced to comply with their demands, and now, she was finally standing up for herself. As the letter was sealed and ready to be sent, Lily felt a mix of emotions, fear, relief, and even a small glimmer of hope. The next few days were tense. Lily couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, that her family's grip on her was still strong, even from a distance. John tried to reassure her, but she could see the worry in his eyes, too. They had no idea what the future held, but they knew that they were in this together. Then, on the fourth day after sending the letter, something happened. The doorbell rang, and Lily's heart stopped. She exchanged a look with John, who stood up, his face serious. He walked to the door and opened it, only to find a courier holding a package. "Is this for Lily Carter?" the man asked. Lily's stomach dropped. She had no idea what it was, but her instincts told her it wasn't good. The courier handed the package to John, who signed for it and brought it into the house. Lily opened it with trembling hands, and when she saw the contents, her breath caught in her throat. It was a letter from her father, but this time, it was different. It wasn't a simple demand for her return, it was a legal document, a formal request for her to return home, backed by the threat of legal action. Her father had found a way to use the law to force her back. For the first time since arriving at John's house, Lily felt truly cornered. She looked at John, her face pale. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice breaking. The room felt suffocating as Lily stared at the legal document in her hands. The weight of her father's demands was heavier than ever. The letter was no longer just a request for her return, it was a threat, one that carried the weight of her family's power. Legal action, a court order, and the looming threat of losing everything she had worked so hard to build, it all came crashing down on her in that single moment. John stood by her side, his face etched with concern as he watched her process the information. He knew that Lily had always been a fighter, but this was a battle like no other. She had never imagined her father would go this far, using the law as a weapon to control her life once again. "What are we going to do?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The fear in her voice was evident, but beneath it, there was a glimmer of defiance. She wasn't going to let this tear her apart, not after everything she had been through. John took a deep breath, his mind racing as he tried to figure out their next move. He had never dealt with anything like this before, but he wasn't about to let Lily face it alone. "We fight," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "We don't let them take you back." Lily's eyes met his, searching for certainty in his words. She had spent so long running from her family, trying to build a life for herself, and now it felt like all of that was at risk. "But how?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What if they win?" John sat down next to her, his hand resting on hers. "We don't know what's going to happen, but I'm not going to let them just take you. We'll find a lawyer, we'll figure out what options we have, but we're not giving up." The determination in his voice gave her a small sense of hope. For the first time since the letter arrived, she felt like she had a chance, like maybe, just maybe, they could fight back. "We'll fight together," John added, his words steady and firm. "You're not alone in this. Not anymore." As the days passed, John and Lily began to plan their next steps. They contacted a lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and could help them navigate the complex legal system. The lawyer, a calm and professional woman named Claire, listened to their situation carefully before giving them a few options. Your father may have the power and the resources to try and force you back, but that doesn't mean he can. There are ways we can challenge this, Claire said, her voice reassuring. But it's going to take time, and you're going to need to be patient. Lily nodded, but the weight of the situation still felt overwhelming. She had no idea how long this fight would last, but she wasn't ready to give up. Not after everything she had been through. Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly with Claire to prepare for the legal battle ahead. They gathered evidence, filed documents, and spent hours going over every possible outcome. John continued to support Lily every step of the way, his presence a constant source of strength. It wasn't easy. There were moments when Lily felt like she was drowning under the pressure, moments when the fear of losing everything was almost too much to bear. But through it all, John never wavered. One evening, as they sat together on the porch after dinner, John turned to Lily with a serious expression. No matter what happens, he said, his voice soft but certain, I want you to know that you've already won. You've already taken control of your life. No matter how this turns out, you've made a choice for yourself. And that's something you should be proud of. Lily looked at him, the sincerity in his words sinking in. For so long, she had been defined by the choices of others, by the expectations of her family. But now, she was standing up for herself. She was choosing her own path, and that made all the difference. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what I would do without you. John smiled and squeezed her hand. You're stronger than you think. You don't need anyone to tell you what to do anymore. Over the course of the next few months, the legal battle continued. It was slow, and the uncertainty of the outcome weighed heavily on both John and Lily. They had moments of hope and moments of doubt, but through it all, they stayed together, determined to fight for Lily's freedom. And then, just as they were starting to feel like they were making progress, they received another blow. Lily's father, refusing to back down, sent another letter. This time, it was a final ultimatum. If she did not return within a week, they would take legal action against John as well, accusing him of harboring a runaway. The threat was clear: if Lily didn't comply, not only would she lose her freedom, but John would face legal consequences as well. This new development sent shockwaves through both of them. Lily was devastated, feeling like she was being forced into an impossible situation. She had already come so far, but now the stakes were even higher. What do we do now? She asked, her voice trembling with fear. John didn't hesitate. We keep going. We fight. We don't give up now. He looked at her with unwavering determination. This isn't just about you anymore, Lily. It's about us. We'll get through this together, no matter what it takes. Lily looked at him, a sense of relief flooding over her. She wasn't alone in this fight anymore. And with John by her side, she knew that no matter what her family threw at her, she had the strength to face it. The tension between Lily and her family grew even stronger as they awaited the legal showdown. The letter from Lily's father was just the beginning. The threats of legal action and the looming possibility of being forced back into her old life weighed heavily on both her and John. They had made progress, sure, but the reality of what was at stake began to settle in. Lily knew that this wasn't just about her anymore, it was about John and Ethan too. She couldn't allow them to suffer because of her past, but at the same time, she knew she couldn't go back to the world she had left behind. It was a battle between loyalty to those she loved and the desire for her own freedom. As the weeks passed, the legal process dragged on, each day bringing more uncertainty and stress. But John stood by her, unwavering in his support, providing her with the emotional strength she needed to keep going. He had never once backed down, not even when things seemed at their darkest. But despite his quiet confidence, Lily could see the strain on him. She could see it in the way his eyes would linger on her, filled with concern but also an unspoken fear. It wasn't just her freedom at risk, it was his life too. As the court date approached, Lily grew more restless. Her family's pressure seemed to be closing in from all sides. The feeling of being trapped between two worlds, the one she had escaped and the one she was trying to build, was almost unbearable. One night, as they sat in the living room, John looked over at her, his voice soft but steady. "You don't have to go through this alone, Lily," he said. "No matter what happens, we'll find a way through it." Lily nodded, her heart heavy with gratitude. She knew that he meant every word. But she also knew that this wasn't just about them anymore. Her father, with all his power and influence, wasn't going to let her go so easily. He had a way of making people feel like they owed him, and Lily could feel the weight of the debt pressing down on her. As the day of the hearing arrived, they both knew that it would be the turning point. The court would decide whether Lily would be free to live her life on her terms or whether she would be dragged back into the world of wealth and control that she had worked so hard to escape. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and intimidating. Lily's heart pounded in her chest as she sat beside John, his presence a silent anchor. They had their lawyer, Claire, who had worked tirelessly to prepare their case, but there was still so much uncertainty in the air. Lily's father, Nathan, was seated across the room, his cold eyes never leaving her face. His expression was a mix of frustration and anger, the kind of look someone gives when they're used to getting their way. The proceedings began, and the tension in the room was palpable. One by one, the lawyers presented their cases, but Lily's mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop looking at Nathan, at the man who had controlled her life for so long. It was hard to believe that the man sitting there was the same person who had raised her, who had dictated every choice she made. It felt like a lifetime ago. As the hours passed, the pressure continued to mount. Lily could feel the weight of everyone's expectations, the court, her family, even John, bearing down on her. She had to make a choice, and it had to be the right one. Finally, it was time for her to speak. Her lawyer, Claire, gave her a reassuring nod before she stood up. The room fell silent as Lily took a deep breath and began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but as she continued, she found strength in her words. "I'm not the person I used to be," she said, her eyes meeting Nathan's for the first time since the hearing began. "I've spent my life under your control, but I can't do that anymore. I am not your possession. I am my own person, and I have the right to choose my own path." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion and defiance. The room was still, but Lily could feel the power of her statement. She had said what she needed to say, and for the first time in a long while, she felt free. Nathan didn't speak. He just sat there, his gaze hard and unyielding. But Lily didn't need him to say anything. She had said what mattered, and that was enough. The judge called for a recess, and Lily sat back down, her heart racing. She had made her statement, but now she had to wait. The next few hours felt like an eternity. Time seemed to stretch on as the lawyers argued and the court deliberated. Finally, the judge returned, and the courtroom fell silent once again. Lily stood as the judge spoke. The decision had been made. Lily had won. She was free. The weight that had been pressing down on her for so long lifted, and she could finally breathe. As the judge called for the court to adjourn, John turned to her, his eyes filled with relief and pride. "You did it," he said, his voice quiet but filled with admiration. Lily nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She had done it. She had taken control of her life, and no one could take that away from her. As they left the courthouse, hand in hand, Lily knew that her life was finally her own. She was no longer defined by the past. She was free to live, to love, and to build the future she had always dreamed of. The weeks following the court decision were a whirlwind of emotions for both Lily and John. Though the legal battle had concluded in their favor, the weight of everything that had happened still lingered in the air. For Lily, it was as if a heavy curtain had been pulled back, revealing a world of endless possibilities. She was free, not just from her father's control but from the self-doubt that had plagued her for years. But freedom came with its own challenges. As Lily settled into her new life, she realized just how much she had been holding back. She hadn't fully allowed herself to embrace the happiness she had found with John and Ethan. She had spent so much time fighting for her independence that she hadn't noticed how much she had come to depend on them, how much she had come to love them. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, watching Ethan play with his toys in the corner of the room, Lily turned to John. "I still can't believe it," she said, her voice soft. "After everything, we made it. I'm really free." John looked at her, his expression filled with a quiet pride. "You always had it in you, Lily. It was never about me or anyone else. It was always about you finding your own strength." She smiled at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. He was right. She had always had the strength within her, it had just taken time for her to recognize it. Over the next few months, Lily's life began to change in ways she never expected. She found herself reconnecting with her passions, painting, traveling, exploring the world outside of the confines she had once known. With John by her side, she felt like she was finally living the life she had always dreamed of, but had never dared to imagine. They took trips together, small getaways that allowed them to leave behind the pressures of the world and just enjoy each other's company. They spent weekends hiking through the nearby mountains, watching the sunset from the peaks, and discovering hidden spots where they could just be themselves. Ethan, too, seemed to thrive in this new environment. He was happier, more relaxed, and even started to come out of his shell more. Lily and John's relationship continued to grow stronger, as they shared their hopes and dreams, their fears and insecurities. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One day, as they sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Lily turned to John. "What do you think life would have been like if I had gone back to my family?" she asked, her voice thoughtful. John considered her question for a moment, then answered softly. "I don't think you would have ever truly been happy. You would have been trapped in a world that didn't allow you to be yourself. But now, you have the chance to create your own path. And I think you're already doing it." Lily smiled, her eyes meeting his. "I think you're right." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound the soft rustling of the wind and the chirping of the crickets in the distance. Life had become simpler for them, but in the best possible way. Lily had learned that true freedom wasn't just about escaping the past, it was about embracing the present, and being open to whatever the future might bring. The future, she realized, didn't have to be something she feared. It was something she could shape, with John and Ethan by her side. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Lily's confidence grew. She began to take on new challenges, starting a small art business where she could share her work with others. She had always loved painting, but had never allowed herself to pursue it as a career. Now, with her newfound freedom, she was able to pour her heart into her art, and it was something that brought her joy every single day. John supported her every step of the way, proudly displaying her work in their home, telling anyone who would listen about her talent. Ethan, too, began to show interest in painting, and the three of them would spend hours together, creating and laughing, their bond growing deeper with each passing day. But despite the happiness she had found, there was still a lingering question in Lily's mind. What would her father think of her now? Would he try to find a way to manipulate her again? Would he accept her choices, or would he try to drag her back into the life she had escaped? She didn't know the answers, but she no longer feared them. She had already faced the hardest part of this journey, taking control of her life, and now she was ready to face whatever came next. One afternoon, Lily received an unexpected call. It was from her lawyer, Claire. "Lily," Claire said, her voice cautious, "your father has been trying to make contact. He wants to talk." Lily's heart skipped a beat. It had been months since she had heard from her father, and she hadn't thought about him much. But now, with everything that had happened, the idea of speaking to him again was unsettling. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Lily replied, her voice hesitant. "I've made my peace with everything. I don't need him in my life anymore." Claire was silent for a moment. "I understand. But I think it might be important to hear him out. He's been asking about you, and it might be an opportunity for closure." Lily sat in silence, considering Claire's words. Closure. That was something she hadn't thought about. She hadn't considered that maybe, just maybe, speaking to her father could allow her to fully move on from the past. After a long pause, Lily finally spoke. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll hear him out." The conversation, when it finally happened, was difficult. But it was also liberating. Lily listened as her father spoke, as he tried to justify his actions and his control over her life. But this time, Lily wasn't the same person she had been before. She wasn't the scared girl who had been manipulated by his demands. She was strong. She was her own person. She made it clear to him that she no longer needed his approval or his influence in her life. When the call ended, Lily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had faced her father one last time, and she had come out stronger on the other side. She was no longer defined by her past, by her family's expectations, or by anyone else's choices. She was free. And with John and Ethan by her side, she knew that the future was hers to create. Months passed, and Lily continued to grow into the woman she was always meant to be. The tension from the legal battles had long since faded, but there were still moments when she would catch herself looking over her shoulder, wondering if her past was finally behind her. Those moments were becoming fewer, though, as she spent more time building the life she had dreamed of. John and Ethan had become her family, and the three of them were creating something truly special. John's support had been unwavering, and every day with him felt like another step into a future she never thought she could have. Yet, despite everything she had gained, there was one lingering question in the back of Lily's mind: would she ever truly be free of her father's influence? Would she ever be able to heal from the years of control and manipulation? She had spent so long running, hiding from the truth, and now, for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face it. One afternoon, Lily sat at her kitchen table, sipping her coffee while John was in the other room, helping Ethan with his schoolwork. It was one of those rare moments of peace that she had come to cherish. The phone buzzed on the counter, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw a number she didn't recognize. A cold feeling settled in her stomach, but she answered it anyway. "Hello," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Lily," came the voice on the other end. It was her father. Her heart skipped a beat. After the last call, she had thought she was done with him. He had promised to back off, to let her live her life. But now, here he was again. "I know it's been a while," Nathan's voice continued, smooth and controlled. "But I've been thinking about you. About us. I think we need to talk." Lily felt a surge of anger rise within her. She had been free of him for so long, and now he was trying to pull her back into his web. "I don't want to talk to you," she replied, her voice firm. "You've had your chance. You don't get to control me anymore." There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment, Lily thought he might have hung up. But then he spoke again, his voice low and almost pleading. "Lily, I've made mistakes. But I've changed. I want to make things right between us." Lily's grip on the phone tightened. "I don't believe you," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You've hurt me enough. I don't need you in my life anymore. I have a family now." She could feel the tears welling up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Goodbye, Nathan." She ended the call before he could say anything else, the sound of her heart beating loudly in her ears. It was over. For the first time in years, Lily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had stood up for herself. She had faced her father and told him exactly what she needed to say. And now, she could finally move on. As she sat there, staring at the phone in her hand, she realized that she had been carrying the weight of her past for far too long. It was time to let go. The phone buzzed again, and Lily quickly wiped her eyes, afraid it was her father trying to reach her once more. But when she checked the screen, she saw that it was a message from John. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She opened the message. "Hey, we're making spaghetti for dinner tonight. Ethan's really excited. Are you in?" Lily chuckled to herself and quickly typed back, "I'm in." Can't wait. She felt the tension of the past few months begin to melt away. In that moment, she knew that her future was no longer defined by her past. It was a new chapter, one that she could write for herself. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Lily continued to pour herself into her art, finding success with her small business, and even starting to teach painting to local kids. John and Ethan were by her side every step of the way, and they had begun to plan for the future together. John was talking about buying a bigger house, one with a small studio for Lily to work in. Ethan was growing into a confident, caring young boy, and Lily felt proud to be part of his life. One day, as they were sitting together in the living room, Lily looked over at John, her heart swelling with love. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked softly. John smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "I think about it every day," he said, reaching for her hand. "And with you and Ethan by my side, I know it's going to be a great future." Lily leaned in and kissed him, the warmth of his lips a reminder of everything she had gained. She was no longer the scared girl running from her past. She was the woman who had built her own life, who had found love and happiness in unexpected places. And for the first time in her life, Lily knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The future, for once, didn't seem so uncertain. It was filled with hope and endless possibilities. And with John and Ethan by her side, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. It was a few months after Lily had made the final decision to sever ties with her father, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. She had created a new reality for herself, one filled with love, purpose, and personal growth. John, with his quiet strength and unwavering support, had proven to be the partner she had always longed for. Ethan, now a lively and confident young boy, had flourished in the warm, stable environment they had created together. Every day, it felt like a new chapter was being written in the book of her life. The house, which once felt small and filled with reminders of her past struggles, had become a place of peace. Her small art business was thriving, and her work had started to gain recognition in the local community. She had even begun exhibiting her paintings at local galleries, something she never imagined she would have the courage to do. But despite all the success and happiness she had found, there were moments when the past would surface unexpectedly. Like when she saw her father's name in an article, or when she caught herself worrying about something trivial, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was a reminder that, even though she was free from the chains of her past, the scars of those years of manipulation and control weren't so easily erased. One crisp autumn morning, as Lily stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for herself and Ethan, she found herself reflecting on how far she had come. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft glow over the room, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. As she stirred the eggs, she heard footsteps behind her. It was John, his tousled hair still damp from his shower. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a warm smile. "Morning, beautiful," he said, his voice soft and affectionate. She smiled back, feeling a flutter in her chest. "Morning," she replied, turning back to the stove. "You sleep okay?" John nodded, walking over to help set the table. "Better than I have in a while." They had both been adjusting to the changes in their lives, and it felt like every day brought a new sense of peace. Ethan had been asking more questions about Lily's past, curious about the things she rarely talked about. She had always been careful to protect him from the darker parts of her story, but she knew that someday, he would need to know the full truth. She wasn't sure when that day would come, but she was determined to handle it when the time was right. As John set the table, Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the life they had built. She had always dreamed of a family, of having a place where she felt truly at home, and now, that dream was a reality. She glanced over at John, who was folding the napkins with the same calm precision he brought to everything he did. "John," she said, her voice hesitant. He looked up at her, his brow furrowing slightly. "What's on your mind?" Lily took a deep breath before speaking. "Do you ever think about the future? Like, where we're headed?" John's expression softened, and he walked over to her, taking her hand. "All the time," he said. I think about it every day. With you and Ethan by my side, I know we can face anything. We're building something special here, Lily. I'm proud of everything we've done together. Lily smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. I feel the same way, she said softly. But sometimes, I wonder if I'm ready for all of this. I've spent so much of my life running from things, running from my past, from my father, from the fear of being trapped again. And now, I'm here, and I'm building a future, but sometimes, I'm not sure I deserve it. John squeezed her hand, his eyes locking with hers. You deserve every bit of this, Lily. You fought for it, and you've earned it. You don't have to carry that fear anymore. We're in this together. She nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. It wasn't just the past she needed to let go of, it was the fear of losing everything she had worked so hard to build. You're right, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I just need to stop looking back and start embracing what's ahead. As they sat down to breakfast, the conversation turned to lighter topics, plans for the weekend, Ethan's school projects, and the upcoming holiday season. For the first time in a long while, Lily allowed herself to truly relax. She wasn't constantly worried about the next threat or the next challenge. She was living in the present, in the here and now, and it felt good. Later that day, as they walked through the park, hand in hand, John stopped and turned to her. Lily, I've been thinking, he said, his voice thoughtful. What do you say we take the next step? I want to make this official. I want to build a future with you, not just for ourselves, but for Ethan, too. Lily looked at him, her heart skipping a beat. She had never expected this moment to come so soon, but now that it was here, she couldn't imagine saying anything but yes. Yes, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Yes, I want that too. John smiled, his eyes lighting up. He pulled her into a tight embrace, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. They had faced so much together, and now, they were ready for whatever came next. The future was uncertain, yes, but they knew one thing for sure, they would face it together, as a family. And with that, Lily realized that the fear of the unknown had finally given way to hope. The future was hers to shape, and with the love of John and Ethan, she knew that no challenge was too big to overcome. The days following their decision to take the next step in their relationship were filled with excitement and anticipation. Lily and John began to make plans for the future in earnest, discussing everything from a potential wedding to the idea of buying a home together. It felt surreal, almost like they were living in a dream. For Lily, it was a new chapter in a life she had once thought was beyond her reach. She had spent so many years running from her past, trying to break free from the chains of her family's expectations, and now, she was building a future that was entirely her own. A future with John and Ethan, a future filled with love and possibility. But despite the joy of their new beginning, there were still moments of doubt that crept in. Lily knew that she had come so far, but sometimes, she still felt the weight of the years she had spent living under her father's thumb. She had always believed that she wasn't worthy of true happiness, that the mistakes of her past would always define her. But with John by her side, she was starting to see that she was wrong. John's unwavering support had helped her realize that her past didn't have to dictate her future. His love, along with Ethan's innocent affection, had shown her what it meant to truly be a part of something bigger than herself. She had a family now, and it was the most wonderful feeling she had ever experienced. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, John turned to her with a thoughtful expression on his face. Lily, he began, his voice soft but serious, I know we've been talking about the future a lot, and I've been thinking. I think it's time for us to take the next big step. Lily looked at him, curious and a little apprehensive. What do you mean? She asked, her heart racing slightly. John smiled and took her hand, his eyes filled with warmth. I want to make this official. I want us to be a family. Not just by name, but in every way possible. He paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. I want us to get married, Lily. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Lily's breath caught in her throat. The words were simple, but they carried so much weight. She had always dreamed of a family, of a love that would endure, but she had never dared to believe it could happen for her. Now, with John's words hanging in the air, she realized that it was more than just a dream. It was real. "John," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes. Yes, I want that too. I want to be with you, always." Tears welled up in her eyes as John pulled her into an embrace, his arms enveloping her in a warmth she had never known. The world outside seemed to fade away as they held each other, their hearts beating in sync. For the first time in a long while, Lily allowed herself to truly believe that happiness wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was something she could build, something she could hold on to. Over the next few months, their life together became even more meaningful as they made plans for their wedding. Lily dove into the details with a sense of excitement she had never felt before, from choosing the perfect dress to picking out the flowers. John, ever the supportive partner, was by her side every step of the way, helping with every decision, big and small. Even Ethan got involved, making sure to pick out the perfect suit for the big day. The wedding day arrived, and the sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow over the small chapel where they had decided to exchange their vows. The air was filled with the sweet scent of fresh flowers, and the sounds of guests chatting happily as they took their seats. Lily stood nervously at the back of the chapel, her heart racing as she glanced at John, who was standing at the front with Ethan by his side. She had never imagined this moment would come, but now that it was here, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with love and gratitude. She looked down at the simple, yet elegant dress she had chosen and took a deep breath. As the music began to play, she walked down the aisle, her heart pounding in her chest. When she reached John, she took his hand, and in that moment, everything felt right. The vows they exchanged were simple, but filled with meaning. John promised to love and support her for the rest of their lives, and Lily, with tears in her eyes, promised to always be by his side, through the good times and the bad. They sealed their vows with a kiss, and the applause from their friends and family filled the chapel, a sound of joy that echoed in their hearts. As they stood together, hand in hand, Lily realized that this was the moment she had been waiting for. She had finally found the love, the family, and the happiness she had longed for. It was no longer just a dream. It was her reality. That night, as they danced together under the stars, surrounded by their loved ones, Lily looked up at John, her heart full. She had come so far, and now, with him by her side, she knew that they could face anything that came their way. The future was theirs to build, and together, they would create a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. For the first time in her life, Lily was no longer afraid of the future. With John and Ethan by her side, she knew that no matter what happened, they would face it together, as a family. The months that followed the wedding were filled with happiness and a growing sense of fulfillment for Lily, John, and Ethan. They had found a rhythm, a flow to their lives that made everything feel right. Lily had not only built a life with John but also developed a deep, lasting bond with Ethan. She had never expected to find such peace and joy after so many years of turmoil and uncertainty, but now, with her family around her, she felt whole. The small art business that Lily had started continued to thrive, and she had begun to host private painting classes for local children. It was a way for her to share her love for painting, and she found immense joy in teaching young minds to explore their own creativity. John, always supportive, helped manage the business side of things, allowing Lily to focus on the artistic side. Ethan, growing taller and more confident every day, often helped set up for the classes and would sometimes sit quietly in the corner, drawing his own pictures while Lily worked with the children. It felt like a perfect little family, one that had come together despite the odds. One afternoon, as they sat in the living room, Lily noticed John looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice gentle but curious. John hesitated for a moment before speaking, his eyes still on her. "I've been thinking about the future," he said slowly. "About where we're going from here. We've built something amazing together, Lily, but I want us to keep growing. I want to give you everything you deserve." Lily's heart fluttered in her chest. She had never imagined that someone would love her so completely, that they would be willing to go so far to make her happy. I have everything I need right here with you, she replied softly, squeezing his hand. You and Ethan are my everything. This life we've built, it's already more than I ever hoped for. John smiled, but there was a hint of determination in his expression. I want more for us, though. I want to make sure we're set for the future, that we have a home we can all share and grow in. Lily raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? I've been looking at homes, John admitted. I want to buy a house, a real one, where we can put down roots. A place for you to paint, for Ethan to grow up in, and for us to make memories. Lily's eyes widened as she took in his words. A house. A real home. The idea was overwhelming, yet it filled her with a sense of excitement. They had never really had a permanent place to call their own, always moving from one small apartment to another. This was different. This was their future. You're serious? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John nodded, his eyes filled with determination. I want to give you the life you've always dreamed of, Lily. And I know this is the next step for us. I want us to have a place where we can create our own story, a place we can call home forever. Lily blinked back tears as the weight of his words hit her. For so long, she had believed she didn't deserve this kind of love, this kind of stability. But now, with John by her side, she realized that she had everything she ever needed. And it was all within her reach. I want that too, she said, her voice steady now, filled with resolve. I want to build that future with you, John. Over the next few weeks, they began searching for the perfect home. It wasn't easy, but every step of the process brought them closer together. They visited houses, imagining what it would be like to live in each one, picturing their future in every space. Finally, they found the one. It was a beautiful, sprawling house with a large backyard, perfect for Ethan to play in and for Lily to have her own studio where she could create her art. It wasn't the most expensive house, but it felt right. It felt like home. When they walked through the front door for the first time, Lily's heart swelled with emotion. This was it. This was the place where they would build the rest of their lives. It was theirs, and it was everything she had dreamed of. John looked over at her, his expression full of love and pride. We did it, he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. This is just the beginning. Lily smiled through her tears. It's everything I've ever wanted. They moved in shortly after, filling the house with their belongings, their laughter, and their love. Ethan settled into his new room, excited about the space he had to play and explore. Lily set up her art studio, finally having the space she needed to fully embrace her passion for painting. John, always supportive, was there every step of the way, helping to turn their house into a home. As the months went by, Lily's life continued to blossom. She had everything she had ever wanted: love, family, a career she was passionate about, and a home where she could finally feel at peace. But more than that, she had found something she never thought possible of herself. She was no longer the scared girl hiding from her past. She was a woman who had created her own future, one built on love, trust, and the support of the people who cared for her. And as she looked around their new home, surrounded by the life she had built with John and Ethan, she realized that for the first time, she truly felt like she had everything she needed. She had a family, a future, and a home. She had love, and she had herself. And in that moment, she knew that nothing could ever take that away. The months following their move into the new house were a whirlwind of activity, but they were also filled with a sense of deep fulfillment and peace. Lily had finally found the stability she had been longing for, and John and Ethan had embraced their new home with the same enthusiasm and love that had always characterized their lives together. The house, once just a dream, had become a living, breathing symbol of their new life, one they were building together, brick by brick, moment by moment. For Lily, the transition from living in uncertainty to creating a home for herself and her family was still surreal. She often found herself standing in the middle of the living room or the art studio, looking around in awe at how far she had come. The space was hers, and it was not just a home but a sanctuary, a place where she could breathe freely, a place where she could finally be herself. With her art flourishing, Lily had taken on more students for her painting classes, teaching them the joy of creativity. She had always loved art, but now, with her own studio, she had the freedom to teach and create without the constraints of time or space. John, of course, continued to be her biggest supporter, helping her with everything from setting up for classes to handling the administrative side of things. He never once complained about the long hours or the endless lists of tasks. He was there, always willing to step in and lend a hand, and it made Lily love him even more. Their weekends became a time for family adventures, whether it was a day trip to the nearby mountains for a hike or a visit to a local museum. They took the time to enjoy each other's company, to laugh, and to make memories. Ethan, too, had settled in well, growing more confident in his new surroundings. He had made friends at his new school and had even started playing soccer, a sport he had always wanted to try but never had the chance to before. It was a joy for Lily to see him so happy, so comfortable in his own skin. The bond between the three of them continued to grow stronger with each passing day. But as time went on, Lily found herself grappling with a new challenge: how to move forward in her career and her personal life. She had built a life filled with love and support, but there were still parts of her past that remained unresolved. While she had made peace with her father's abandonment and the trauma of her childhood, there were still moments when the weight of it all would hit her like a wave. She had learned to push through those moments before, but now, as she stood at the threshold of a new chapter in her life, she couldn't ignore the deeper questions that lingered in her heart. One evening, as they sat in the kitchen after dinner, Lily looked over at John, her eyes filled with a mixture of uncertainty and determination. "John," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About where we're going next. I feel like I've come so far, but there's still a part of me that's afraid. Afraid of what happens next, of whether I'll keep moving forward, or if I'll get stuck again." John put down his coffee mug and walked over to her, his hand reaching out to take hers. "Lily, you've already come so far. You're stronger than you think, and you've already built something incredible. The future is uncertain, yes, but that doesn't mean you can't keep moving forward. You have me, and you have Ethan. We're in this together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a family." Lily smiled at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. He had always been her rock, the one who believed in her when she had doubted herself. "I know," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I just don't want to lose myself again. I don't want to lose the sense of who I am, what I've built, just because I'm afraid of the future." John squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with understanding. "You won't lose yourself. You've already found yourself, Lily. And I'll be right here, every step of the way. You don't have to go through this alone." For the first time in a long while, Lily felt a deep sense of peace. She had spent so much of her life running from her past, from the fear that she wasn't good enough, that she didn't deserve happiness. But now, with John and Ethan by her side, she realized that she was already living the life she had always dreamed of. She didn't have to be afraid anymore. The next day, Lily decided to take the next step in her career. She had always dreamed of opening her own gallery, a place where she could showcase her own work as well as the work of other local artists. It was a big step, and the fear of failure lingered in the back of her mind. But she knew that if she didn't take the leap, she would always wonder what might have been. With John's encouragement and Ethan's excitement, she began the process of making her dream a reality. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when she doubted herself, but with every step, she grew more confident. As the months passed, the gallery began to take shape, and soon, it was ready for its grand opening. The day arrived, and Lily stood at the door of the gallery, her heart racing. This was it, the culmination of everything she had worked for, everything she had overcome. As the guests arrived, she felt a sense of pride wash over her. This was her moment. This was her dream, and she had made it come true. John and Ethan stood by her side, their pride and support shining through in their smiles. Lily knew, in that moment, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had come so far, and now, with her family beside her, she was ready for whatever the future held. The grand opening of Lily's gallery was a moment she would never forget. As she stood at the entrance, watching the guests trickle in, a flood of emotion swept over her. She had poured her heart into this space, transforming it from a simple idea into a reality. It wasn't just a gallery, it was the culmination of everything she had worked for, a symbol of her growth, her journey, and the strength she had found in herself and her family. John stood by her side, his hand gently resting on her back, offering her the kind of support he always did. Ethan, beaming with excitement, ran up to her, his little face filled with pride. "Mom, this is amazing," he exclaimed, holding out a small bouquet of flowers he had picked from the garden earlier that day. Lily smiled, her heart swelling with love. "Thank you, sweetie," she said, bending down to give him a hug. The gallery was filled with the hum of conversation and the sound of clinking glasses as people moved through the space, admiring the artwork. Lily had invited friends, family, and local artists to attend, and the room was buzzing with energy. The walls were lined with paintings from both established and emerging artists, including several of Lily's own pieces, each one telling a story of its own. The paintings were a reflection of her journey, her struggles, her triumphs, and everything in between. But more than that, they were a testament to her resilience and her ability to create something beautiful out of the pain and uncertainty of her past. As the evening wore on, Lily found herself standing near one of her paintings, watching as people discussed it with admiration. She felt a quiet sense of pride wash over her. This was hers. This was her dream come true. As the guests mingled, John took her hand and led her to a quieter corner of the gallery. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice full of warmth. "This is everything you've worked for." Lily looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied softly. "You've always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." John smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm just glad I got to be a part of it." They stood there for a few moments, taking in the sights and sounds of the evening. It was surreal, in the best possible way. It felt like everything they had worked for was finally coming together. Ethan ran up to them, his face lit with excitement. "Mom, look," he said, pulling her toward a group of children who were admiring one of her paintings. "They like your art. They think it's awesome." Lily's heart melted as she watched Ethan, his pride evident in his words. She had always wanted to inspire others, especially children, and to see them so engaged in her work filled her with joy. It was a reminder of why she had started this journey in the first place, not just for herself, but for others too. As the evening continued, Lily took a moment to step outside for a breath of fresh air. She stood in the cool night, looking up at the stars, reflecting on everything that had led her to this point. She thought about the years of struggle, the pain, and the uncertainty. She thought about her father and how, for so long, she had felt trapped by his expectations. But now, standing here, in this moment, she realized that she had broken free. She had created a life that was her own, one that was filled with love, happiness, and purpose. And she had done it on her own terms. As she stood there, John joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You okay?" he asked, his voice tender. Lily leaned back into his embrace, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. "I'm more than okay," she replied softly. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The future felt bright, full of endless possibilities. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face them. With John and Ethan by her side, she knew they could handle anything that came their way. The gallery was just the beginning. She had built something real, something that would continue to grow and evolve as they did. The life she had once dreamed of was now her reality, and she couldn't wait to see what came next. As they returned to the gallery, the sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air once more. Lily took John's hand, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Together, they had created a life that was filled with love, and together, they would continue to build it, step by step. They had come so far, and the future was theirs to create. As the weeks passed, Lily's gallery continued to thrive, and she felt a growing sense of pride in the success she had achieved. Her paintings were selling well, and the classes she taught were becoming more popular by the day. The feedback she received from her students and visitors filled her with a sense of accomplishment she had never known before. She was no longer just the woman running from her past, she was an artist, a teacher, and a mother, building a future on her own terms. John had never wavered in his support for her. He was there for every step, from setting up the gallery to handling the business side of things, always encouraging her to reach for more. Their relationship had deepened in ways she had never imagined. They spent their evenings discussing everything from future plans to simple dreams, and their connection only grew stronger with time. Ethan was thriving as well, happy and well-adjusted, excelling in school, and continuing to enjoy his soccer games. Lily often watched him with a sense of wonder, amazed at how far they had come since those early days when they had lived in uncertainty. Life, it seemed, was finally aligning in all the right ways. One evening, as they sat in the living room together, the soft glow of the fireplace casting a warm light over the room, Lily turned to John, her heart full of gratitude. "John, do you ever think about how much our lives have changed?" she asked. He looked at her, his eyes full of affection, and nodded. "All the time," he said softly. "I think about it every day. The past few years have been a whirlwind, but I wouldn't change a thing. You and Ethan are everything to me." Lily smiled, feeling a sense of warmth spread through her chest. "You know," she said, her voice thoughtful, "sometimes I still have moments when I'm in awe of how far we've come. I never imagined I'd have this life, this family. And I can't help but feel so incredibly lucky." John reached out, gently taking her hand. "You've earned every bit of it, Lily. I'm just grateful that I get to share it with you. And Ethan feels the same way. We're a family, and that's what matters most." Lily squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you, John. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." He smiled, his eyes softening. "And I always will." They sat there for a moment, the quiet warmth of their home enveloping them. It was a peace Lily had never known, and she felt a deep sense of contentment. The future, which once seemed uncertain and daunting, now felt filled with hope and promise. As the weeks went by, Lily found herself growing more and more confident in her place in the world. She was no longer afraid of her past, no longer held captive by the choices others had made for her. She had built a life for herself, a life filled with love, creativity, and purpose. It was a life she had chosen, and that made all the difference. One Saturday afternoon, John and Ethan took her out for a surprise. They had planned a trip to a local park, and as they arrived, they led her to a secluded spot by the lake. There, nestled in the trees, was a small wooden bench, overlooking the water. John smiled at her. "I thought we could sit here for a while," he said, "just the three of us." They sat down, and for a long while, they simply enjoyed the peaceful scenery, the sound of the water lapping against the shore, and the warmth of the sun on their faces. Ethan, always full of energy, ran around in the grass, laughing and shouting with joy. Lily looked over at John, her heart full. "This is perfect," she said softly. "It's everything I've ever wanted." John smiled, pulling her close. "It's only the beginning, Lily. We've got a lifetime ahead of us." They watched as Ethan ran to them, his face flushed with excitement. "Mom, Dad, look," he said, holding up a small rock he had found by the water's edge. "I found this for you." Lily took the rock from him, smiling at his enthusiasm. "Thank you, sweetie," she said, kissing his cheek. For a moment, everything felt right. They were a family, united in love and joy, building memories together. And for the first time in her life, Lily felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Later that evening, after a long day of fun and laughter, they returned home, where the warmth of the house welcomed them. As Lily settled down with a cup of tea, she found herself reflecting on everything that had led her to this point. She had come so far, from the pain of her past to the joy of her present. She had faced her fears, rebuilt her life, and found a love that was deeper and stronger than she had ever imagined. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. And now, with John and Ethan by her side, Lily knew that the future was hers to create. It was no longer a place of fear and uncertainty. It was a place of hope, of endless possibilities. And as she looked around at the life they had built, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. The past was behind her, and the future was bright. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The months following their trip to the park were filled with a renewed sense of purpose and connection for Lily, John, and Ethan. The family had grown even closer, and Lily had never felt more certain about the life they were building together. She was no longer burdened by the shadows of her past, no longer held back by the fear that had once defined her. She had built something real, something lasting. The gallery continued to thrive, and Lily's work was gaining more and more attention from local collectors. Her art classes, too, were becoming increasingly popular. She loved sharing her passion with others, especially the young students who looked up to her as a mentor. It was a role she cherished, one that allowed her to give back in a way that felt meaningful. One afternoon, after a particularly successful exhibit, Lily sat in her studio, reflecting on the journey she had taken to get to this point. As she worked on a new piece, she found herself thinking about the future again. She had everything she had ever wanted, a family, a career, a home. But now, she realized that she wanted to do even more. She wanted to reach a larger audience with her art, to take her work beyond the local community. She wanted to leave a legacy, to inspire people with her story and her paintings. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt confident that she could do it. She had already overcome so much. Why should this next step be any different? That evening, after a family dinner, Lily sat down with John to discuss her thoughts. As they shared a quiet moment on the couch, she turned to him. "John," she said, her voice filled with determination, "I've been thinking about taking my art to the next level. I want to have a larger presence, maybe even show my work in other cities, maybe even have my own traveling exhibit." John listened carefully, his eyes warm and encouraging. "I think that's a great idea, Lily. You've worked so hard to get to this point, and I know you're ready for more. But you don't have to do it alone. I'll be right here, helping you with whatever you need." Lily smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. John had always believed in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. His support had been unwavering from the very beginning. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." As the days passed, Lily began to make plans. She contacted a few well-known galleries in larger cities and submitted proposals for her work to be featured in exhibitions. She also began researching how to get her art into the hands of more collectors and curators. It was a daunting task, but Lily felt ready for the challenge. She had spent so many years living in fear of failure, but now, the thought of stepping outside of her comfort zone excited her. She knew that this was what she needed to do to fully embrace her future. Meanwhile, John continued to be her rock. He handled the day-to-day responsibilities of their life with ease, making sure Ethan was well taken care of and supporting Lily in every way he could. Ethan, now a bright, confident young boy, continued to excel in school and soccer. He had become quite the little athlete, much to his parents' delight. Lily watched him grow with pride, feeling so grateful for the family they had become. Weeks passed, and finally, Lily received a call from a gallery in New York City. They wanted to feature her work in a large exhibition. She could hardly believe it. Her dream was starting to become a reality. She hung up the phone, her heart racing with excitement. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. "John," she exclaimed, running into the living room where he was reading. "They want to showcase my work in New York. This is it." John jumped up, wrapping his arms around her in excitement. "That's incredible, Lily. I'm so proud of you. You've earned this." They celebrated that night, toasting to the next chapter of their journey. Lily knew it wouldn't be easy. The logistics of preparing for an exhibition of that scale were overwhelming. But with John by her side, she knew she could tackle anything that came her way. As she worked tirelessly to prepare her pieces for the show, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Every brushstroke was a reminder of how far she had come, how much she had overcome, She wasn't just painting anymore. She was creating her future. The day of the exhibition arrived, and Lily stood before her paintings, surrounded by people who appreciated her work. She could hardly believe it was happening. The gallery was filled with admirers, critics, and collectors, all eager to see the artist who had come so far. Lily had come a long way from the woman who had once been afraid to even pick up a brush in front of others. She had found her voice, her place in the world, and now she was sharing it with the world. As the night went on, Lily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She wasn't just showcasing her art, she was showing the world who she truly was. And the response was overwhelming. People were moved by her paintings, and many expressed interest in purchasing her work. It was a dream come true, and as Lily stood there, surrounded by admirers, she realized that this was just the beginning. Her journey was far from over. She had come so far, and now she had the world at her feet. As she looked around at the people who admired her work, Lily knew that her story was one of strength, resilience, and triumph. She had fought for her happiness, for her family, and for her future. And now, she was living the life she had always dreamed of. She was no longer running from her past. She was embracing her future, and it was brighter than she could have ever imagined. The success of the New York exhibition marked a turning point for Lily, but it also brought with it a new set of challenges. Her artwork was gaining more attention than she had ever anticipated, and with that, came an influx of opportunities. As she received invitations to exhibit her paintings in other cities and offers from prestigious art galleries, Lily realized just how much her life was changing. The once uncertain future she had dreamed of was now unfolding before her eyes, and it was both exhilarating and overwhelming. John stood by her side through every step of this new journey, helping her navigate the complexities of being a rising artist. They spent late nights discussing logistics, making plans for her upcoming exhibitions, and finding ways to balance her career with the family life they had worked so hard to create. John's unwavering support was her anchor, and Ethan, now more confident than ever, continued to flourish in school and in his hobbies. One evening, as they sat together after a long day, Lily turned to John, her mind racing with the weight of it all. "John," she began, her voice tinged with exhaustion, "I never thought any of this would happen. I thought maybe my art would be something small, something just for me. But now, this is bigger than I ever imagined." John smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "You've worked hard for this, Lily. You deserve every bit of it. I know it's a lot, but I believe in you. We'll make it work, just like we always have." Lily leaned into him, grateful for his words. She had spent so many years doubting herself, unsure if she could ever achieve her dreams, but now, surrounded by success, she was starting to realize that she had always had the strength to make it happen. She wasn't just living her dream, she was actively shaping it, every single day. "I just don't want to lose sight of what's important," Lily confessed, her voice soft. "This is also amazing, but I don't want to get caught up in the whirlwind of it. I still want us to be a family, to be together, not just running around chasing after opportunities." John gently took her hand and squeezed it, his gaze steady. "I get it, Lily. We'll make sure we don't lose sight of what matters. Family comes first. Always." His reassurance filled her with peace. She had learned over the years that success wasn't just about professional accomplishments or recognition, it was about the love and support of the people who mattered most. With John and Ethan by her side, she felt more grounded than ever. As Lily continued to grow in her career, she began to realize that her art was no longer just an expression of herself, it was a way for her to give back to the world. She received messages from people who had been deeply moved by her work, stories of how her paintings had inspired them or helped them process their own emotions. It was in those moments that Lily felt the true power of art. It wasn't about fame or success, it was about connection, about touching the lives of others in ways she had never imagined. She poured more of herself into her work, each new piece more personal than the last. But as much as her art was thriving, there was a part of Lily that longed for balance. She didn't want her success to overshadow the simple joys of life, the quiet evenings with John and Ethan, the walks in the park, the moments of laughter and love that were the foundation of their family. So, she made a conscious effort to slow down. She took more time to enjoy the little things, to be present in the moments that truly mattered. One Saturday afternoon, as the family enjoyed a picnic in their backyard, Lily looked at John and Ethan and realized just how lucky she was. They had built a life together, one filled with love and support, and it was more than enough. As they sat on the grass, laughing and sharing stories, Lily felt a deep sense of contentment. She didn't need anything more than this. Later that evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Lily and John sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet. The stars were twinkling above, and the air was cool and refreshing. Lily turned to John, a smile on her face. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about everything we've built. I've always wanted more, but I've realized that I have everything I need right here." John smiled back, his eyes filled with warmth. "You've always had everything, Lily. You just needed to see it." She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the day's work melt away. "I'm so grateful for you," she whispered. "For us." They sat in comfortable silence, their hearts full, knowing that they had created something beautiful together. Life was full of unknowns, but Lily knew that with John and Ethan by her side, there was nothing they couldn't face. Together, they had built a life that was rich with love, purpose, and possibility. And as she looked ahead to the future, Lily knew that the best was yet to come. The past had shaped her, but it was the present and the future that she could now fully embrace. And she was ready for whatever came next. As the months passed, Lily and her family settled into their new rhythm. The balance between her growing career as an artist, her role as a mother, and her relationship with John seemed to come more naturally with each passing day. She was proud of what she had accomplished, but there were still moments when she had to remind herself that it wasn't just about success, it was about the people she loved and the life they were creating together. John, as always, was her rock. His unwavering belief in her, in their future, and in the love they shared made everything feel possible. Ethan, now a young boy with a contagious curiosity, continued to thrive, and the joy he brought into their lives was unmatched. One afternoon, after an exhausting but successful exhibition in Chicago, Lily found herself sitting on the couch, going through some emails, while John and Ethan played outside in the backyard. It was a quiet moment, but it gave her the space to reflect on everything that had happened. She thought about the gallery's success, the art shows, and the steady stream of work coming in. She thought about how, for the first time, she was beginning to feel truly at peace. But there was still a part of her, buried deep inside, that worried about whether she was doing enough, whether she was still being the kind of person she wanted to be. It was the kind of worry she had learned to push aside, but it still crept up now and then. She had spent so many years running from her past, from the constraints of her family, from expectations. And now, as she stood on the cusp of even greater success, she couldn't help but wonder if she was still running, but from herself this time. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening and the rush of laughter that followed. Ethan ran into the living room, his face lit up with excitement. "Mom, look what I found," he exclaimed, holding up a small, smooth rock he had picked up from the garden. "It's for you." Lily smiled as she took the rock from him, feeling her heart swell with pride. "Thank you, sweetie," she said, pulling him into a hug. His little arms wrapped around her, and for a moment, everything in the world felt just right. As Ethan ran off to join John outside, Lily took a deep breath and let the warmth of the moment fill her. She knew that whatever was on the horizon, it was the love she shared with her family that truly mattered. Later that night, as they sat down for dinner, John looked across the table at Lily. There was a thoughtful expression on his face, one that she had come to recognize as the sign that he was deep in thought. "Lily," he said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking. I know things have been moving fast for us, your art career, our life together, all of it. But I think it's time we start talking about the next step. Maybe it's time we think about expanding. Maybe even a bigger house for us, or taking the business to the next level." Lily looked up from her plate, her brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked, unsure of where he was going with this. John set his fork down and leaned in, his eyes focused on her. "I think we've got something special, Lily. And I want to make sure we're not just letting it slip by. Your art, our family, this life we're building, it's all growing. I want to be prepared for whatever comes next. I want us to have the space to keep growing together, not just in our careers, but as a family. Lily's heart fluttered at his words. She had been so focused on her career and her art that she hadn't fully processed the reality of just how much their life had expanded. She had been so busy with exhibitions and business plans that she hadn't stopped to think about how they could continue growing as a family. I've been thinking the same thing, she said after a moment. Maybe it's time to look at something bigger. A place where we can all have more space, more room to breathe and grow. John's face lit up at her response, and for the first time in a while, Lily felt a surge of excitement about the future. They had already created so much together, but now, there was the possibility of even more. Over the next few weeks, they began the process of looking for a new house, one that would fit their growing needs. They wanted a place that would allow them to continue nurturing their creativity, a home where they could make even more memories. The search was overwhelming at times, but it also brought them closer together. As they toured different properties, they found themselves imagining the life they could build in each space. Finally, they found the one. It was a spacious house with a large, open studio for Lily to paint in, and a sprawling backyard for Ethan to play in. It was perfect. It was everything they had been looking for, and more. The day they signed the papers and officially became homeowners again, Lily felt a sense of joy that was hard to put into words. This wasn't just a house, it was the next step in their journey together, a place where they could keep building their dreams. As they moved in, packing up their old home and starting fresh, Lily looked around at the rooms that would soon be filled with their laughter, their love, and their growth. She realized that, just as she had done with her art, she was creating something new, a new chapter in their lives, one that was full of promise and excitement. They had everything they needed to succeed, not just as individuals, but as a family. And for the first time, Lily realized that she wasn't running anymore. She was exactly where she needed to be. She had everything she had ever wanted: love, family, a career she was passionate about, and now, with John and Ethan by her side, she was ready to face whatever the future held.